Hey there Dev Squad, Virtus here and welcome back to my Unreal Engine 4 Mech Combat tutorial series. Within today's video, we're going to be showing you how you can set up the functionality for upgrading your base stats. Your base stats being your health, your stamina, your speed, and your damage. So, having said that, the player is going to be able to press the plus icon, and when they do it, it is going to change a value for the text, which is going to be showing you how much damage you're going to be doing, how much health you're going to have, how much speed you're going to have, and all of that good stuff. So there is plenty of functionality that we're going to be adding in today's video, so stay tuned for it as there is plenty underway. So, having said that, let's go ahead and dive into Unreal Engine 4 and get started. So the first one that we're going to be working on is going to be our health. Now the health is going to be pretty straightforward. In terms of the code that we're actually doing for upgrading that health, all we're doing is simply checking to see whether or not they have enough fragments, or time fragments rather, to make that purchase. And if it does, if they do have enough, what we're going to be doing is increasing that value by 20%. So we're going to take the existing value for the maximum health and then simply just multiplying it by 1.2. Now, because we want the cost of this upgrade to go up over time, we're also going to be multiplying the cost of upgrading it as well. So there's going to be plenty of functionality. Let's get cracking and let's get started. So what we're going to have to do is open up our third person character. Now, inside of our third person character, we need to have a couple of variables relating to this. Now, what we already have is our health. And this health is just going to be going from 0 to 1. Now, for this all to work correctly, what we need to have is a second variable, which is going to simply be called max health. And then with this, we're going to go ahead and create a float value, and we're going to set the default value to be 1, because that is your default max health. Because at the minute, it is going between 0 and 1, 1 being 100%. Now that we've done this, what we also need to have is a variable which is going to be called health upgrade cost. And this is essentially just going to be storing how much or how many of these fragments you need to be using to make this upgrade. So, because we're working with an integer variable for the number of fragments itself, we are going to be changing this to an integer. The default value for this is going to be what you want it to cost by default to upgrade this ability. Now in this case, I'm going to set it to 5. So if you want to upgrade this by default, it is going to cost 5 fragments. Now that we've done this, what we can do is a couple of things. First things first, open up your shop menu. Now what we're going to do is, with the text that we've got here in the top right of the health, we're going to get this to dynamically display the cost of making this upgrade. So having said that, what we're going to be doing is simply setting this, our content for this, which is currently just a text, and we're going to be binding it to that variable. So having said that, we're going to go to content, text, and then we're just going to be creating a binding. And then just like any other content binding, we're simply casting to the third person character, which is where it's stored, and then we're going to get the health upgrade cost. And we're just going to feed it in just like that. And then we're going to set the minimum integral digits to 2. And then with our object wildcard, you want to set this to get player character. So having said that, if I go ahead and compile now, hit play, and then possess, and if I run up to this little bench of mine, you are going to see it is going to display 5, because that is the cost of making this upgrade. So now that that is all good, what we need to do is actually go into our heads up display, and we need to take it from changing between 0 to 1 using just one variable. We need to get it to divide the current variable by the maximum value instead. So having said that, go to Mech Combat, and then you want to go to Blueprints and open up your HUD widget. Inside of here, find your health, and then what we're going to do is grab our percentage binding for this, go to the function, and instead of just directly feeding this into here, we're simply going to do float divided by float. Our A is going to be our health, and then as third person character, we are going to get our max health, because this is the value that's going to change, and by dividing the current value by the maximum, you are going to get a number that's going to go between 0 and 1 still, which is going to work. And what you should have is something that's going to look like this. Delete this link and then just hook it up just like that. Once we've done this, go ahead and hit compile, hit play, hit possess, and as you can see here, our health bar is still working. And if I was to walk up to one of these and let them shoot me, you are going to see that number's going down. It's working just the way we want it to. So that bit there is perfect. What we can do now is move on to going into the shop menu and actually working on the functionality. So, having said that, what we're going to do is add a piece of text into here. This text is simply going to display the maximum health, so where they are at the moment. So if they press plus on this, they are going to be able to see what this goes to. So having said that, create a content binding, and then all we're going to do is cast to that third person character, and as third person character, we are going to get our maximum health. And we're simply going to display this on the screen. Object wildcard is going to be get player character. If we go ahead and hit compile now, what we can do is actually take a look at this. So if you press E to interact, you're going to notice our maximum health is 1. Now 1 is not particularly a good number to be displaying for health. Generally your health on screen is going to go from 0 to 100 or something like that. So what you might want to do to actually make this look better for the player but without changing the functionality itself, you can go to that function and just before you put it into the toText, you could simply do float by float. And what we can do with this is simply multiply it by 100. So if we was to upgrade it, which is going to increase it by 20%, it'll go up to 120 instead of 1.2. So if we go ahead and test this now, jump in, we can do just that. So press E, and now it's going to display 100. Now what you'll also notice is it's currently off to the side, and that is simply because we need to set the anchor point to the center of the screen, just like we have done with the rest of our text. We're also going to set our default text to 100, just so we can place this in a little bit better, and I'm going to be having it here. That's done. So, time to add the functionality for the button to make all of this happen. So what we're going to do is scroll down and we're going to create an onClicked event for this button. Now inside of here, we're going to be running a little bit of code. The first thing we're going to do is cast to the third person character. And the reason why I'm casting to it is because that is where our information is going to be stored. And once we've done this, what we're going to be doing is a branch check. And this branch check is just going to check to see whether or not the player has enough fragments to make this purchase, to make this upgrade. So as third person character, get your time fragments, and you also want to get your health upgrade cost. And then what we're going to be doing with this is from our branch, we're just going to be doing integer greater than or equals to, because that is what we're looking for. And we're checking to see if our time fragments is greater than or equal to the cost. If it is, all we're going to be doing from here is setting our maximum health, which is the variable that we created earlier, so set max health. And what we're going to be doing is setting this equal to the current value multiplied by 1.2. So do float multiplied by float. B is going to be 1.2 and A is going to be the current value. So get max health and then just feed it in just like that. Once we've done this, what we're going to do from there is take away that cost from the number of fragments because they've made that purchase. So it's going to cost them fragments. So what we're going to do is simply go back to the start here and we're going to set fragments. And with this, we're going to be setting this to the current value minus the cost of this purchase. So having said that, what we're going to do is take the information we've got here so we don't have to make new references. And we're going to do integer minus integer. First value, time fragments, second value, and then that is the cost. And this is good to go just like this. Now, because we want to procedurally increase the cost of making these upgrades, which this step is entirely optional of course, what we can do is actually take our health upgrade cost and then multiply it by a value. So every time you upgrade it, it gets more expensive to make that upgrade. So having said that, what we can do is as third person character, we can then set our health upgrade cost. And with this, all we're doing is simply taking this information, we're doing integer multiplied by integer, and what we're going to do is simply multiply this cost by, let's say, 2 to start with. So it's going to double each time you do it, and then we're going to put that health upgrade cost in just like that. So that should be everything for upgrading our health. If we go ahead and hit play, possess, we're going to pick up a couple of these fragments so we can actually test this, and then walk up to the bench, press the little plus, and as you can see here, it has gone up. It's now going to cost 120, and the cost of making that purchase has doubled. So having said that, that is working perfectly and working the way that we want it to. So with that having been said, what we're going to do now is move on to the next one. The next one is our stamina. So what we're going to have to do is go into our third person character, and with this, we're going to have to set a max sprint. And the reason for that, because once again, we need a maximum and a current value, and then we can just increase the maximum that we're working with. So with our sprint, we're just going to create a new variable, and we're going to call this max sprint. And also, if we go ahead and drag this up to reorder it, so just so it looks a little bit better, and just keep them together, what we're going to do is set this to a float, and then we're going to go ahead and compile this, and we're going to set this to 1. And the default value is 1, which is fine because that's what we want our maximum sprint to be. Once we've done this, once again, all we're doing is going into our HUD, and we want to change the way that that's being displayed. So having said that, go to Blueprints under Mech Combat, HUD widget, and then inside of here, select our bar for our sprint energy, go and find your progress, get your binding, and then inside of here, instead of just feeding this in directly, all we're doing is float divided by float. Get the current value, and then as third person character, get the maximum value that we're going to be increasing over time. So having said that, get max sprint, and then just hook it up just like that. And what should happen is if I go ahead and compile this, hit play, and test this by hitting possess, you can see our bar is there, it's regenerating, and it's also going to go down when I use that sprint energy. So that is good to go. With that being said, what we're going to do is open up that shop menu, and then inside of here we're going to add the same elements we did before. So having said that, we're going to have a piece of text which is going to display the maximum amount of energy, and then over here our cost is going to be linked to the cost of upgrading this. Now we haven't actually defined that cost, so we're going to go into our third person character, and then inside of here we're going to add a variable called sprint energy, or rather sprint upgrade cost, and make sure you spell it correctly. And we're just going to be setting this to an integer, compile it and set that default value to 5. Go into our shop menu, we're just going to link this with a content binding. So we're going to take this, we're going to get the information from the third person character, and then as third person character, get that sprint energy cost, and then just dump it into there just like that. And then object wildcard, get player character. Go ahead and hit compile, go into our design view, and that is going to work perfectly. What we now need to do is link the text, which is going to show the current maximum sprint. So having said that, we're going to create another binding, and then with this, once again, all we're doing is casting to that third person character. As third person character, get our max sprint. And then with this, all we're doing is just going to multiply this by 100. So instead of it going from 0 to 1, it's going to go from 0 to 100. Set the minimum integral digits here to 2. Object wildcard, get player character. Now that that bit's all done, what we're going to do is move on to the functionality for actually setting up the button. So go ahead and create a onClicked event for the button, and then to make this a little bit cleaner so we can find it all easier, we're going to take our health upgrade button here, press C to comment it, and we're just going to say health upgrade. And then that way we can easily separate our code. Now, just like before, all we're doing is casting to the third person character to get the information. And what we're doing is checking to see whether or not they've got enough fragments to make the purchase to upgrade that sprint energy. So as third person character, get max sprint, and then get sprint energy as well. And with this, all we're going to be doing is simply using this later on. But the one that we're after right now is the fragments, because we're trying to check to see if they've got enough to make this upgrade happen. So get the time fragments and get the sprint upgrade cost as well. We are going to be feeding this into a branch. The branch is just going to check to see, is it greater than or equal to, and if it is, it's going to purchase it. So condition is going to be integer greater than or equal to, A is going to be time fragments, B is going to be our sprint upgrade cost. True, what we're going to be doing with this is setting our max health. To get that, drag off of as third person character, set max sprint, and then with that done, what we're going to be doing is setting our max sprint to the sprint energy multiplied by, or rather we're going to be multiplying the max sprint by 1.2. So max sprint, we're going to do float multiplied by float. So we're going to be taking it and multiplying it by 1.2, and that is just going to be feeding in to that just like that. So what you should have is something that looks nice and simple, nice and easy, just like that. And then once we've done this, we're going to be taking away the time fragments because they've made that purchase. So set time fragments, and we're going to do integer minus integer to remove these fragments from their inventory because they've made that purchase. So time fragments and take away the upgrade cost. And then last but not least, what we're going to do from here is set our health upgrade cost, or our sprint upgrade cost rather, to ×2, so it costs twice as much. So set sprint upgrade cost, and we're going to set this to sprint upgrade cost. We are going to do integer multiplied by integer because we're taking the current cost and multiplying this by 2, just like that, and linking it. And that is our code for upgrading the sprint energy. Hit C to comment this, and we're going to give this the name sprint upgrade. And now, with all of this being done, we're simply going to go in, compile it, and make sure it works. If you've got an issue where your object wildcard isn't there, go ahead and add it in, hit compile again, and then if you're still getting issues, just make sure all of your links are perfect. So as you can see here, set time fragments, that wasn't linked up, compile, and we should be good. So what we're going to do is simply go in now, hit play, hit possess, and we are going to test this. So at the minute, we have got our stamina. It's going to cost 5 to upgrade it. At the minute, when we click it, it's not going to do anything because we don't have enough. However, if I then go in here, pick up 5 of these lovely fragments, and then increase it, you are going to notice the number is going to go up. Now, what you will see there is that you aren't able to click it, and that's just simply because of the text. And the text is a little bit offset, so with this, set your default value to 10 or 100 rather, and then simply anchor this to the center so it's not getting in the way and stopping us from clicking that button. Let's try again, play, possess, get some fragments. That'll do. No, it won't, that's only 3. There we go. And then in here, and then we're going to increase this. As you can see, it's gone up to 120, and I'm now going to be able to sprint for longer. So that bit there is perfect. So, with this being said, we've only got 2 upgrades left to do in our base stats. Those are speed, which is going to be our movement speed overall, and also the damage. So, what we're going to do is go into our third person character again, and all we're going to do is set up all the variables for the speed. Now, the speed, the variable for this, is not something that we've got at the minute. At the moment, we're just using the max walk speed that we've got. So we're going to be adding in our speed, which is going to be speed. And we're going to be setting the default value of this, once you've changed it to something that you can use, to 600, because that's the default. Now, where we've got our sprint, if we go up to the top and find this sprint, which at the moment is just underneath this little comment box called sprint, we're going to be changing these values. The set max walk speed, the default speed, we are going to be hooking this up in here. Now notice it's asking for a float value, so change this to a float, and then instead of just manually having in 600 in here, all you're doing is putting it in. So when they come out of their sprint, it is going to change their default speed to whatever this is. So if we increase this variable, it's going to increase that max walk speed. So having said that, what we're going to do now is add in the cost of increasing this. So speed, upgrade, cost. And we're going to be setting this to an integer, so it's something that we can work with. Compile, and then the default amount is going to be 5. Once this is done, what we're going to be doing is opening up our shop menu, and we are going to be making the magic happen. So our speed, we're going to go ahead and add in a piece of text for this. We're going to set the default value to 100 and anchor it to the center. Once we've done that, we're just going to simply be moving it over to the right with the rest. And with this, what we're going to be doing is binding this to our speed variable we just created. So create a binding, and then with this, cast to the third person character where it's stored as third person character, get your speed, and then with this speed, we're simply going to hook it up straight into the return value. We don't need to multiply it. Object wildcard, get player character. And that's good to go. Go into our design view, and then for our cost, which is up here, we're going to be creating another binding. This binding is just going to be getting the value from the third person character. So cast to third person character as third person character, get speed, upgrade, cost. And with this, just chuck it into the return value just like that. Minimum integral digits, set it to 2, object wildcard, get player character, just like that. Once we've done this, what we can do then is go into our design view and set up the functionality for the button. So, having said that, create an on-clicked event, and then with this, what we're going to be doing is casting to the third person character, and we're going to run that check to see whether or not they can afford to make this purchase. So, do a branch check, and then in this branch check, you want to get time fragments, and you want to get the speed upgrade cost. And then condition, integer, greater than or equal to, time fragments in there, upgrade cost in there, and you're good to go. If it is, what we're going to be doing is, as third person character, we are going to get our character movement component, so get character movement, and if we scroll down to the bottom, we should be able to find that. What we're going to be doing is setting our max walk speed, and we are going to be setting this equal to our speed. So get speed, and we are going to be hooking it up into here. Now, before we want to make that change, what we're going to be doing is, as third person character, set speed by itself, and what we're going to do with this is actually multiply it by 1.2. So it's going to make the change to the speed variable, and then it's actually going to apply it. So speed, we are going to do float multiplied by float, and we're going to be multiplying it by 1.2, and then the variable for this is going to be the current speed. So get speed. So get speed, and then put it in just like that. Once you've done this, you then want to set it, and then after that, we are going to be setting time fragments, and we're just going to be taking away the cost of that purchase. So once again, integer minus integer, and then with this, we are going to have time fragments minus the speed upgrade cost, and lastly, we are then going to set the upgrade cost to multiply itself by 2. Set speed upgrade cost, and then what we're going to do is, with this, we're going to do integer multiplied by integer. Second value is going to be 2. The upgrade cost is going to go into A. Now that's done, we can go ahead and comment this because we finished it, and we're going to give us the name speed. Go ahead and hit compile. If you've got any errors, object wildcard, once again, make sure you have got that linked in correctly, and any other references, hit compile and you're good to go. Let's go ahead and hit play, possess, and actually test all of this. So press E, we got our speed up here, and if I was to go ahead and get some of these fragments, I've got 7, I can then increase that speed, go out of the menu, and as you can see, I am actually walking faster now. If I was to just keep on collecting loads and loads of fragments, I can continue to make those purchases so I can actually increase my speed even further. So if we go into it now, we've got 10. My speed is now going to be 864. And as you can see, over time, I am getting faster and faster. And if I was to just sit here and collect loads of time fragments, you are going to be able to see this number going up. So what I'm going to do is just stand right underneath the spawner, just kill, kill, kill until I get 20 of these lovely fragments. And then once I've got 20, you are going to be able to see my speed has essentially doubled from what it was initially. So I'm just going to keep picking these up until I've got 20. So there's a good few there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're on 5 at the minute. We're going to keep getting these. We're on 11. We're almost there. And hopefully you guys can start to see the gameplay coming to life, because we're having to kill the enemies to make our mech more powerful, whether that be with speed, with stamina, with health, and all of that good stuff. So at the minute, I've currently got 16. And now I'm up to 19. Kill this last one here. And then let's go ahead and make this upgrade happen. So you can see we're moving relatively fast as it is. Walk in here. Upgrade that speed. We're now moving at 1068 and we are just galloping along. We're moving really, really quickly. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that you might want to move your text all over to the left so you can have and allow space for your text to increase the way that it did. So having said that, open up your shop menu. In here, we're just going to move it all over to the left hand side like we have done with stamina. So with that being done, what we're now going to do is set up the most difficult one, and that is the damage. So what we're going to do is open up our third person character. We are going to have the variable for damage upgrade cost. We're going to set this to an integer, and we are going to set the default value to 37. And we are going to set the default value to 5. Once we've done this, what we're going to have then is a damage variable. Add the variable with the name damage. And once we've done this, we are simply going to be setting this to a float. And with this default value, we are then going to hit compile. Now, we're going to set this to 0.5 by default. But what we need to do is actually link this up so this variable is used when we're actually damaging these bots. So if we was to open up our spider bomb and look for that damage code that we've got here, you can see we've got all of the special attacks here. So we've got default attack, whirlwind, helicopter. The one that we're after over here for default attack, where we're reducing the health, instead of actually using a preset value over here, we are just going to, as third person character, get the damage instead. So this is going to allow us to dynamically change the amount of damage that we can deal to this enemy. With that done, what we're going to do now is open up our shop menu and make all of it happen. First things first, text over here, we're going to be creating a content binding. This content binding is going to be casting to the third person character, and then we're going to be getting the upgrade text. So get damage upgrade cost, hook this up, minimum integral digits, we are going to set this to 2. Once we've done this, object wildcard, get player character, and that is perfect. Go to our design view, and then we're going to add a piece of text over here. We're going to set the default value to 37, for example, and then we're going to create a content binding for this, making sure we anchor this to the center, and we are going to get that damage. And that damage, once again, is stored inside the third person character. As third person character, get damage. And with this, what we're going to do is actually multiply it so it's a nice heavy looking number. So we're going to do float multiplied by float. So go ahead and grab that, and then we're going to hook this up to our return value. Now, I'm only going to be multiplying this by 100. You can play around with this number, it's entirely up to you. Get player character here as the reference. And then what we're going to do just before we add the functionality, we're going to hit play and possess to make sure that it's displaying that damage on the screen correctly. And as you can see here, it's saying the default damage is 50 because we set it to half of that enemy's health. Now, time to add in the functionality for actually increasing it. Find our button, create an on-clicked event from it, and then with this, we're going to be doing the same code as we have done before. So, cast to the third person character. We want to check to see if they can afford to make this purchase. As third person character, you want to branch. And then with this, we're going to be doing integer greater than or equal to. So integer greater than or equal to. And then as third person character, get time fragments because we're checking to see if they've got enough time fragments for this purchase. And then the purchase price, which is going to be damage upgrade cost. And then go ahead and hook it up. Object wildcard, get player character. And once they've done it, once we know they can afford it, what we're going to be doing is as third person character, set our damage. And we're going to be setting this to the current value. So get damage, and then we're going to do float multiplied by float, and we're going to increase this by 1.2, and we're going to set that into our damage. Once that's done, what we're going to do from here is set the time fragments to a lower value so it actually takes into consideration the purchase. So as third person character, we are going to set time fragments, and then with this, take that, and then we're going to do get time fragments, or we can just use the references we've got there already. So we're going to do integer minus integer, time fragments minus the cost, and that is it. And the last piece of code we're going to do is simply set the damage upgrade cost to multiply so it gets more expensive after each upgrade. And what we're going to do with this is simply integer multiplied by integer, b is going to be 2, and then a is going to be our damage upgrade cost. Hit compile, and then if we go ahead and test this, everything is going to be working, and that is going to be all of the upgrade stuff for the base stats working, set up, and good to go. I know this has been a very time-consuming episode, but functionality for stuff like this is just going to take its time. There's a lot of data to go through. So, increase my damage, you can see it is going to go up, and that's all good. Anyway guys, that is everything for today's video. Once again, thanks for watching, stay awesome, keep creating. Your boy Virtus, signing out.
This video was made possible by my supporters on Patreon. If you want more videos like this, check out my Patreon page using the link in the description. To stay up to date on new releases, make sure you follow us on social media.